Man, what's going on, everybody? How are you guys feeling? If you guys aren't feeling good, then hopefully this will make you feel better, all right? I've done a lot of these videos. I've done a lot of these different comparisons. This isn't even a comparison at all. This is kind of an updated review of a video I've done already earlier this year. Now, I've done a lot of these. The one I did earlier this year was pretty much the same. I'm not going to lie. Not much has changed for this specific phone, but a lot of things have changed for a lot of parts within this phone, if that makes any sense. So we've seen a new Android OS version, so that's Android 9.0. But on top of that, we've actually seen a brand new phone of the same exact lineup. So we saw the Galaxy Note 9 be released. And even though this is not a comparison, I'm not going to compare both of them side by side because I don't really know too much about the Galaxy Note 9. I just kind of want to do a brief reintroduction of this phone. I'm going to do another one of these probably next month or in a couple months to talk about how it holds up in 2019. But should you still buy a Galaxy Note 4 in the later part of 2018 and quite possibly early 2019? Let's go ahead and find out. So the Galaxy Note 4 actually came out in 2014, so it's about 4 years old at this point. Actually, at this point, it's a little bit over 4 years old, which is pretty crazy. And it doesn't necessarily feel aged, in my opinion. You know, some phones you could look at that even came out in 2014, be like, yeah, that doesn't really look like a really amazing, you know, high-end phone. For example, a lot of people are not going to like me saying this, but the iPhone 6 Plus, that phone came out in 2014, and I don't really think that phone looks as good now as it used to, but it is what it is. You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and there's a lot of phones that came out in 2014 that don't really hold up nowadays, but it is what it is. But the Galaxy Note 4, in my opinion, is one of those phones that doesn't really look that bad. And a lot of people are going to say, well, how are you going to call the 6 Plus not good looking, but the Note 4 good looking? Like, they both are almost look the same. In my opinion, the Galaxy Note 4 kind of makes sense for the bezel that it has and a lot of other things with it. I mean, you get a huge OLED screen and a lot of other cool features that we'll talk about in a second. But the Galaxy Note 4 feels a little cheaper, okay? I'll definitely say that. Compared to the iPhone 6 Plus and a lot of other phones, it feels way cheaper just because it's pretty much built out of plastic for the most part. There is a little bit of bezel around the chassis of the phone, so when you hold it, it does make it feel that much more premium, but it feels probably like a 3 out of 10 in terms of premiumness. Even the front screen, when you push it down, it feels like a little cheap. It feels like it's creaky a little bit, but that could be different per unit, so I'm not going to hold it against it. But just know that this phone doesn't really feel the most premium, especially now when we're going to the trend of like phones being super, super expensive, but at the same time, super premium, and they feel they're built out of glass and they're built out of like space rock and stuff now. So it's pretty crazy what phones are accomplishing now. But one of the craziest aspects of this phone is actually the screen that I kind of talked about. Now, it doesn't feel the most premium, okay, but it is a 5.7-inch AMOLED, Super AMOLED screen at that, and it looks super beautiful, and I think the colors of this thing are awesome. It is an OLED, so you can get all those like dark blacks and power-saving features that the OLED screens come with, and I'll definitely say this is one of the pros, one of the best features of this phone. And at the time, I'll say like most phones right now have OLED screens. They're kind of turning, even iPhones now, for the most part, have OLED screens, except for the iPhone XR, but a phone like this, you know, not many phones in 2014 were producing OLED technology in their phones. You know, Apple wasn't doing it, LG wasn't doing it for the most part, and a lot of other phones weren't doing it either. And Samsung was a huge maker of OLED screens, and they pushed it in all their panels, which was super awesome for most of their panels except the budget ones. So I'll definitely say the screen of this phone is one of the pros, and I like it a lot. But at the same time, OLED isn't really the best in terms of long-term use. And what I mean by that is, if you compare IPS panel, which is something like on the 6 Plus, the 6S Plus, the 8 Plus, even the XR, all those phones have IPS panels. You can use that panel for like 10 years and probably not have any burn-in or any residue on the screen based off what you put those photos and things. If you put a white background on for like a year, I mean, you'll probably get some problems, but most likely the pixels won't be burnt in for the most part on average use. Okay, if you put a white screen up, yeah, it's probably going to be like bad, but on an OLED screen, for the most part, some people get burn in on their screen, which is just residue on the screen. If you left like the nav buttons or the status bar, things like that kind of burn in into the screen. So it kind of makes the phone, you know, it doesn't look as good. The screen is kind of has a bunch of stuff in the background, and the resale value goes down a lot also. So it's like a lose-lose. Burn-in is the worst thing ever, but OLED screens are my preferred panel, and that's what I like. And I made a video last year, and I said, literally the title was why OLED screens suck, and a lot of people didn't like it, but I was pretty much talking about the reason they suck is because of the burn-in, and the burn-in is the worst thing ever. And the Galaxy Note 4, I mean, if you plan on getting it now, I would recommend just getting one that does not have burn-in. Make sure you ask the people, be like, hey, does the screen have burn-in? If they say no, take the chance. If they say yes, I mean, I would probably do a little bit more research on it, but it's definitely one of the saddest things because the OLED panels are amazing, but when you're going so far back as even the Galaxy Note 4, which isn't that old of a phone if you think about it, it's still a very capable phone, but the screen, You just gotta make sure it's all good. Now the front also has a home button, which actually doubles as a fingerprint sensor, so that's actually really cool. Not a lot of phones in 2014 had a fingerprint sensor, and the Galaxy Note 4 was one of them, and it was the first Note lineup of the phones that had a fingerprint sensor. And when you double that up with the capacitive buttons on the side, I mean, that's like a win-win. I always like the capacitive buttons. I like the nav buttons more now because the bezels are getting slimmer. But phones like the Nexus 5 and the Nexus 6P and the Nexus 4 and all these other phones that had nav buttons, but they had huge bezels, it just didn't really make much sense to me. And I really wish they never did it like that, but who am I? I'm not like part of their design team. Now, another crazy thing about the Galaxy Note 4 is that it does have a removable back, and you have the option of expandable storage as well. So that's super awesome. And you can also remove the battery, which is even better. It's a huge reason why this phone is still pretty decent, and one of the main reasons why it's still relevant, because if you have a problem with the battery, you can easily replace it and everything like that. And I'll get into more of that in a second, but it also has a 16 megapixel camera on the back, and at the time this thing was amazing, but now it's decent. I'll definitely say it's not bad at all. It shoots 4K videos. It's overall decent, but it's really in the middle. It's a camera, it'll get the job done. You can probably get some dope shots out of it if you really try it, but Samsung really does a good job if you keep it stock, even if you don't flash a ROM on it, which I'd probably recommend you doing. But if you don't flash a ROM on it, you can easily, there's so many settings in the stock camera app for Samsung that is really a really cool thing that they did. And even if the camera sensor isn't that good, the settings within the camera will probably do you fine, and you'll probably enjoy it. So overall, I'll definitely say the camera is definitely in the middle. It's not a pro. It's not like one of the main reasons to pick up this phone, but it's not a con either. I'll definitely say it's leaning more towards the pro phase than the con phase, so I'll just leave it at that, guys. Now, in terms of performance, this phone is still fairly decent, Unfortunately, it did kind of stop at Android Marshmallow, so a lot of things like that, you're kind of on an older software, but this phone was pretty capable. It had 3 gigabytes of RAM. It still has that. And, it'll keep a lot of apps in the background and everything, apps open up just fine. And gaming and everything is fine too, You're really not going to run into too many problems in terms of the performance if your performance is more in the light phase. Now, you have to remember that over time and as time progresses, most app manufacturers stop worrying about older devices that kind of stop getting supported, even if it does have the highest end specs or whatever, and they look more towards the newer phones, and they kind of tailor their apps to the phones that are being developed now. So if you have a game like Real Racing 3, for example, they're not looking at the Galaxy Note 4 and tailoring their app to the Galaxy Note 4. They're tailoring their app to the Galaxy Note 9, to the Google Pixel 3 XL, to all these different phones, because their demographic is not the Note 4, the demographic is the newest and latest phone. So, but just because your phone has the specs and everything like that, it doesn't necessarily mean that the game will be tailored to you, because the Galaxy Note 4, it might have 3 gigs of RAM or whatever, but it doesn't have like a 19,000 core processor, the new Adreno chips or whatever that, or the Exynos chips that the new phones have. So that's kind of my opinion on it. Again, I'm kind of a little bit, I don't know too much about that specific thing, but that's kind of what I'm saying. But in terms of performance, I think it'll do you just fine if your performance and if your usage overall isn't too demanding. My performance on a daily basis isn't too demanding. I just keep things like personal hotspot and stuff on all day, so things like that eat up the battery, but it's not really performance. But speaking about the battery, this phone does have a 3,220 mAh battery stock. If you keep it stock, that's what you're getting with, and it's okay. The battery life is decent if your battery life is at 100%, okay? If your battery size, the milliamp hours, is a full 3,220 milliamp hours. But what you have to remember, and like I said earlier, this phone does have a removable back and a removable battery. So if you have any problems with the battery life, or you don't think it lasts as long or whatever, all you have to do is go to Amazon and pick up another battery for this thing. You can get a stock Samsung battery like this, and you can go ahead and just update to it. But what I would recommend you doing if you do plan on getting this phone, literally there's I think it's a Power Bear company, I don't even remember, but you can easily go and upgrade this battery life. Instead of 3,220 milliamp hours, you can go get like a 10,000 milliamp hour battery, which is insane. And there's no phones out there that have that size battery. I think some blue phones have it or something like that. But on stock, and especially Samsung, they're not going to make a 10,000 mAh battery phone for a while. So this is a humongous option for you if you plan on getting it. And it's just like one more persuading factor to pick up one of these things if you're in the market for it. Now another huge feature and advantage overall for this thing is that it does have the S Pen, and it's really such a cool thing. I like the S Pen a lot. It's awesome, and at first, I honestly thought it was a gimmick. I was like, who cares about it? But the more I use it, the more everything, I said this before, the more I wish the iPhones had it, the more I wish like my computer even could use some stylus. I know the Apple Pencil exists, but the Apple Pencil does not support the iPhones, which sucks. I don't know why they ever did that. Like, can they just make something that works on everything? But that's just another crazy thing, and the S Pen is super cool, and that's another huge reason to pick up this phone. And, you know, I talked a lot about the best things about it, but like I said, the software updates are not the good thing. I kind of hate that about it. Just the Android in general, they really need to start upgrading and updating their phones more often, because right now it's stuck on Android Marshmallow, it's on stock. But if you're willing to root it and custom ROM it, I'm pretty sure there's an Android 8.0 ROM out for it, or even an Android 8.1 ROM out for it. So that's always the option. I would recommend you rooting and ROMing it if you plan on getting it, because you can upgrade it to even longer. But even if you don't flash anything on it, I mean, it's still not a bad phone at all. So to answer your question, is the Galaxy Note 4 still worth it in the later part of 2018? I'll definitely say for a backup phone, it's not a bad option, you know? Even for a main phone, I mean, if you don't demand that much, it's not a bad option. I mean, you're kind of backed up in security updates, like you haven't gotten security updates in a while, and a lot of other things that come with having an outdated software. But so if you fit in that criteria, either you need a backup phone for if your phone's broken or something, or if you just need like a temporary phone and you don't demand that much, you don't need the latest and greatest, and you don't care that your phone's on like a 2 or 3 year old software, then yeah, it's not a bad option, I would think. But if you do plan on getting this phone to keep it for like more than like 2 months, I would probably recommend you rooting it and custom ROMing it, just so you can get more features out of it and you can get a little bit more security out of it too. So if you want to pick one of these up, I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to get one. I'll also leave some links to the battery cases and batteries that I talked about if you guys want to just like an all one-stop shop, just get everything you need to. They are affiliate links, so you help out the channel when you do buy things. And also, if you need to buy anything off Amazon, use those links, guys. It actually helps support the channel every single time you do something like that, and actually helps me do giveaways and things like that too. So it'll mean so much if you guys could do that. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think the Galaxy Note 4 is still worth it in the later part of 2018? A lot of things have changed. I want to know what you guys think, so leave them down in the comment section. I'll be reading them. Hit that like button though, that'll mean so much, and it'll help out the channel a lot too. But definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also, check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel is also linked down below. I would really appreciate if you guys could check that one out too. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.